Welcome to Jared Scott Outdoors. This YouTube channel is dedicated to getting our youth more involved in the outdoors. To do this, I'll be out with family and friends doing all sorts of outdoor adventures. This week on Jared Scott Outdoors, we're going to be out pronghorn hunting. Now, last week, my son Cade, I don't know how he did it. At 10 years old, he drew a really hard to get pronghorn tag, and then he ended up getting just a giant of a buck. And so he did really well. But we had two youth to fill tags on, and we just ended up running out of time. And so we've got Jared McCrory, a friend of mine that we've been hunting with for years. His son, 12 years old, also drew a pronghorn tag. It's going to be his first big game hunt. And we want to go ahead and follow his hunt now and show you what happened there when he got a beautiful buck. So that's the hunt you saw last week with Cade. But as I mentioned earlier, we still had another youth with a pronghorn tag. So about a week later, we were back out for another hunt. The youth was Nathan, and he was my friend Jared McCrory's son, who had never hunted big game before either. We also had Cade, who just wanted to tag along because he loves any excuse to get out. In order to avoid spooking off the pronghorn before seeing him this time, we timed it to hike up onto a high point at first light so we could glass the nearby country and get an idea on where the pronghorn were. There weren't any in the immediate area, but we did see several groups of antelope a long ways off in a couple different directions. With a couple good options as far as being able to sneak in to get a better look, we made a game plan and headed off to make a try. We drove a few miles to get closer to the first group we wanted to look at, and when the road dipped into a draw and put us out of sight, we parked the rig right there and went on foot the rest of the way to close the gap. We were still a half mile away, so we made sure to stay out of sight as we covered ground as quickly as we could. Every now and then we would peek out to make sure we were still heading in the right direction, and then finally popped out at a point we could see them well. We just carefully peeked over the lip so only our heads would be visible if they happened to be looking our way, and started glassing them up. It's kind of tough to see them at this angle as they're just in sight but blending in with the distant mountains. We had over a dozen goats with 2 bucks. However, both bucks were young and not the kind of mature bucks we were looking for this early in Nathan's hunt. Maybe after a full day of missed opportunities, we'd consider a buck like these. Now that still didn't end this stalk. As we were driving over to this area, we had noticed that the antelope over here had separated into 2 groups, and it was actually the second group that we would be in the best position to sneak in for a possible shot. The only problem were all of these antelope that we were just looking at. In order to check the others out, we had to make ourselves visible to this group, and if they spooked towards the others, they'd scare them all away. So we kind of gambled on a new plan. If we backtracked out of sight and then walked into view at a slightly different spot, it would hopefully scare them to our right, leaving the other herd of pronghorn on our left unaware of our presence. Well, sure enough, when we did walk out on top where we could be seen, the pronghorn were quick to spot us. Those that were bedded down got up and they all stared our way. But which way would they run? We made sure to keep a steady pace to their left so they knew where we were headed, which would hopefully send them the other way. While it did take them some time to finally commit to a direction, they did take off in the direction we'd hoped. Now it was just us and the one herd, and so we could sneak in more slowly without the worry of the other pronghorns messing up the stalk. Inching toward the edge of the ridge we were on, we spotted the pronghorn. There were several bedded down, and they were only about 300 yards off. As we looked them all over, there were a couple bucks in the mix, and one stood out as a good-looking buck. While it wasn't super tall, it had great cutters and curled at the top quite a bit, so its overall length was probably much better than it appeared. Nathan was pretty excited about this buck and was more than willing to try to get a shot on it. Now, peeking over the grass to glass the animals was one thing, but getting Nathan set up for a shot was a completely different ballgame. To get a clear, solid shot would require sneaking to the edge of the ridge where Nathan could lay down on a solid rest. That would mean we'd be in full view of the entire herd of antelope, and as you know, they have great eyesight. This would be tough. So the plan was to have Cade and I stay back while Jared and his son snuck forward. Where I was sitting, only my head and spotting scope was visible to the antelope, not the tripod the scope was on. But Jared and Nathan had to move forward right to the edge. They were hoping to use the backpack to rest the gun on so that Nathan could be rock solid on the shot. As they started inching their way forward, several of the pronghorn got up and started feeding. At first we thought they might have been spooked, but as they fed we realized that's all that was going on. However, it still made me a little nervous as the big buck was one of the first ones to get up, and our first concern was that they'd catch us or move further away. As we watched, however, instead of moving further away, they actually started feeding closer to us. Now you can see the blurriness at the bottom of the screen because I was trying to film just over the top of the grass so I wouldn't get caught. But you'll see that as the animals feed to our left, it actually brings them into better view. Of course, that also means they'd be able to see us easier as well. Meanwhile, Jared and Nathan are slowly setting up the pack and getting the gun rested on it and just getting settled in to make a good shot. By now, the buck has come from the original 300 yards to 250 yards, which is great. Nathan was a little nervous about having a far shot, so the closer it came, the better. The fact that the buck just kept moving and feeding, however, did make it a little harder for Nathan to get his target. Between other pronghorn walking behind and in front of the buck, and the buck just continually stopping only to move again, just made it more difficult for this first-time big game hunter to feel steady for that shot. For example, at this point, Nathan was ready, but the other smaller fawn was just too close for comfort. He just had to wait a little longer. By now, the buck is staying out at the 250-yard range, basically just feeding from our right to left. So while it was still in range, I was starting to worry he would hesitate a little too long, allowing the buck to feed out of range. I've had similar situations end that way in the past, so I knew all too well it was possible. With these two bucks feeding by each other, you can really see the difference in maturity levels between a mature buck and a young one. As time went on and Nathan still hesitating to take that shot, even Cade, who was behind me, started asking what the problem was. He couldn't see the buck, so he had no idea what was going on. Finally, as Nathan felt steady and was ready for the shot, he pulled the trigger. Yep, you didn't hear anything because it was a misfire. This was a crazy year for me with misfires, but this time it was Jared's ammo that he'd purchased. After going through a couple boxes of ammo leading up to this, they hadn't had a single misfire. So what were the odds? Either way, with another round now in the chamber, Nathan zeroed back in on the buck. Got it, got it, you got it. Good shot. Nathan! Good job!
Nice job.
Nathan! Your run's over.
Nice job.
Oh, you're going good.
Huh?
The coloring of his face is really dark. And
is he right there? First big game. First big game.
One shot. I like it. I like it, Nathan. Your dad had me all kinds of worried. Well, you gotta like that when it pans out that nice. That was awesome.
It's funny watching guys just like.
You think when you're belly crawling and we're up on just, as you can see, just wide open. There isn't a rock or even really a sagebrush here to hide behind. And so it was just open, and there's 20 sets of eyeballs that any one of them could see you, 250 yards off. And he did it. He made a good shot. First big game animal, first shot at a big game animal. And he drilled it. Looked like a really pretty buck too. We're excited to go check this out. So
that's an awesome feeling. I love hunting, but I think it's even better when your kid gets one. It's fun when it all works out. One shot, drops the animal. It's good. Couldn't be happier.
I really hope that's some curve one, Dad.
as we headed over to check out Nathan's buck, his father and I couldn't help but be surprised. We had kind of expected the day to be filled with lots of tries before finally getting it all to come together. And here Nathan had his buck down in just hours of the first day he came out to hunt. Just a little guy! Holy smokes!
Oh, there's the good hit.
It's a nice buck. Look at that.
That's a shot. Oh, there's the shot.
Well, that's the exit.
That's the
Because I
exit.
think it was facing the other way.
It was facing that way.
Perfect shot, though. Beautiful cutters on it.
Drove nicely.
All right, here you go, Nathan's buck. It is a beautiful buck. Has a lot of curls, some really big cutters, and he drilled it. Good job, Nathan.
Thanks.
That was it was a tense 10 minutes waiting for him to get a shot. We were all wondering, when's this shot happening? And then when he got his bead, man, he got it, and just a perfect shot. It went down good. It's a really pretty buck. I think there's a good chance it's the same buck that Kate and I saw and wished we would have shot on that opening warning. We were really questioning it, so it's a good buck. But anyways, it was a fantastic hunt with Cade and Nathan. Both of them did a really good job for first time big game hunters, and they both ended fantastically. So that's going to wrap up this episode. These episodes can't be done without your help. You know the drill. Please make some comments, like, and subscribe, and I'll keep working on more videos.